Hello, everyone, and welcome to Grow With Us. My name is Evan Barton, and I'm your host who helps create conversations with the innovators and leaders of a growing tech center in Tulsa, Oklahoma. The Grow With Us podcast highlights the work of community leaders, tech entrepreneurs, nonprofit professionals, and talent development advocates in Tulsa. Grow With Us is a podcast of In Tulsa. In Tulsa's mission is to connect talented individuals and companies to stimulate economic growth in Tulsa and to create more prosperous communities across the region. Each episode, Grow With Us discusses the growth of opportunities, the growth of communities striving for change, or the tech and innovation that is changing the landscape of Tulsa. On this episode of Grow With Us, I'm speaking with Dr. Claire Sbanotto, the Director of Community Programs at the Ronni K Iranni Center for the Creation of Economic Wealth at the University of Oklahoma. We discuss Claire's experience in K-12 and higher education in Tulsa, program and community engagement with social entrepreneurs, and programs like The Mine and Campus Tulsa's Impact Academy. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Grow With Us. I am so excited to welcome the lovely, the intelligent, and the amazing Dr. Claire Sbanotto to Grow With Us. Thank you so much for being here.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. This has been a long time coming. We've known each other for almost 3 years now and worked together with Campus Tulsa's Impact Academy. I'm really excited to get to highlight your work and to have a conversation with you today.
Me too.
This is going to be great. Let's just go ahead and kick it right off with, I'd love for you to introduce yourself in whatever way you're comfortable to our Grow With Us audience.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm Claire Sbanotto, like you said. Introduce myself. What is my...
However you want to tell your
my
story.
Background. Okay. So yeah, I am a Tulsan. I grew up here in South Tulsa. I graduated from Jenks High School. And then I went to University of Oklahoma for undergraduate and graduated with a major in secondary education with focus on English. Awesome. After college, I came back to Tulsa through Teach for America. So that's a little bit interesting.
Yes.
I'm kind of a non-traditional Teach for America Corps member because I was traditionally trained as a teacher and then also placed in the city where I'm from. So that, you go on, it used to be you would go on, you would apply, you would select like your top 10 regions on a map. Of course, you're picking like LA, Hawaii, New York, all these places. Yeah. I did the same thing. And then I'm placed in Tulsa. So I moved back home in with my parents and taught for a couple years with TFA and then kind of moved through Tulsa public schools for the remainder for like the next 10-ish years. Awesome. In different positions. So program management kind of level positions and ended my career with TPS in the Office of Federal Programs, supporting principals and their title funding.
Awesome.
And then at the same time that I was working at Tulsa Public Schools, I pursued my master's and my doctorate through OU as well.
That's awesome.
With the support of Teach for America to do that.
Yeah, that's amazing. The master's and doctorate pursuit concurrently with teaching is probably like such a journey. It's so much education.
Yeah, it's a lot. But it's also, OU has programs that are kind of specific to people doing that. So they're made for career teachers or career kind of school leadership professionals working towards that. So it's night classes, weekend classes, and all the research you're doing and work that you're doing hopefully lines up with the work you're doing during the day. So you can merge the two.
That's good. At least it's like you don't have to go get like a part-time job or anything like that to like supplement the education.
That's right.
Job you're doing is supplementing the education, which is really cool.
Right.
So what did you teach when you were in TFA?
I taught at Tulsa Met Junior High and High School. I taught 7th grade English language arts. So reading, writing, and loved it. It was a great experience. It was really cool to be. I was at an alternative school. And so we had kind of non-traditional teaching. It was a lot of project-based curriculum. It's called Big Picture Learning is the philosophy of that school, and had a really good experience. I don't know that I'm suited to be a forever teacher, I think, but I felt very well suited in education.
Yeah.
And so, I taught there for many, many years. And then COVID happened. I think all of us were like, what am I doing with myself?
Yeah.
And I did the same thing and just ended up sort of applying in different spaces and moved into higher education. So I am at OU now with the Ronni K Iranni Center for the Creation of Economic Wealth, ICCEW, and I'm the program director there.
That's amazing. I'm gonna ask you one more question about your teaching career.
Okay.
What was your favorite book to teach as an English language arts teacher?
Okay, so also being at one of the alternative centers, we had a little bit more autonomy over our literature selection.
Yeah.
So at the time, I'll date myself, it was 2011 that I was teaching. We did the Divergent series.
Yes, I was reading that in 2011.
Yeah, it's like perfect for 7th graders. It was really, we did a lot of really cool programming around it where we took some tests. Everybody got put into their different factions.
Oh, yeah.
We had a lot of kind of Socratic debates and things around like what is right, what is wrong, good and bad.
And now we're living in a dystopian.
So that was really fun. I have a lot of really fun memories of that, of spending months with a classroom split into factions. And they didn't get to choose either, so it wasn't just groups of friends. It was really where people were really best suited. And,
I'm like, I wonder, I can't remember. I just watched all those movies and I can't remember what they call it. It's not like they do the reaping in the Hunger Games. That's what it's called when they like select people. But like, what's the name of that? They take a test, the placement something.
Yeah, when they're 13, they like go in, they do like it's not really like a personality test, but they like put them under and whatever their brain plays through a certain scenario. Yeah. I cannot remember what it's called.
Crazy. Yeah. I rewatching the movies. The first movie is so good. The second two, like really, for lack of a better word, divert from the whole plot. But that's really cool. And I asked that question, not necessarily obviously, but just because like literature and education in Oklahoma is, I think, a contentious issue. But in terms of like, let's just be honest about what our experiences were. Like I read The Hobbit, I read Lord of the Flies, Treasure Island. We read so many books that are like, in some ways considered classics. And I'm always interested to hear when there is like a modern classic that can also, I think in a lot of ways, like really tell that story of like, we are all different and we all live in a society.
I mean, I think for me as a teacher and also I was with Teach for America. So mission of the organization is also choosing, contemporary literature and really meeting your students where they are, I think. So it was important for me. We read some of the classics. We read the short stories. Shirley Jackson, The Lottery is like a, 7th grade classic. But you'd read something like The Lottery and then move into something like The Hunger Games or Divergent that sort of translate that classic literature into something more relevant, I think, to kids today. And that just like keeps their attention a little better. If like at the end of the day, we want them to learn and be, intellectually curious and critical thinkers, we need to be reading books that are interesting.
Absolutely. And whether it's like pop culture interesting or like, interesting in their substance. And I feel like that book definitely hits the mark on that.
That's right.
Transitioning into kind of like higher ed, that's amazing. Now you get to work with students like continuing their pursuit of education into a university, whether they're doing a 2-year program, 4-year program. You probably have a wide variety of programs that you support, which we'll get to talk about later. But I love that you've had kind of a student in every way, if that makes sense. Like, you probably have worked with, teenagers, early teenagers, and then late teenagers. That's a big difference in terms of maturity levels and then also intellectual curiosity, as you just mentioned.
Yeah, it's been different. It's definitely a transition. You move from, 12, 13-year-olds. And then when I was in my project management work, I worked a lot with elementary schools and those more school leaders, but I was around elementary age kids often. And then, into kind of young adults who are freshmen, sophomore, juniors in college, really thinking about their futures and building out a different set of skills. You're trying to get them into approaching life instead of like teaching them basic like academic skills. It's been really different, but it's been really super fulfilling. I'm really, really happy in that work. I don't know that I could ever go back to. I feel very passionately about K-12 work, but I think where I fit the best is higher ed and older ages.
That's awesome. Well, we'll get to dive into that a little bit more. I want to ask you a little bit about your Tulsa story, which you kind of previewed a little bit, but like now you live, work, and play in Tulsa and kind of have been throughout your life in different phases. So tell us a little bit about, what your experience with Tulsa is and how has it changed over time for you?
Yeah. So I'm from here, like I said, and then came back after college. I love it. And I'll be here forever. My family lives here. My sister moved back many years ago with her family. I don't see myself anywhere else. I don't know. What is my Tulsa story? I think I've seen Tulsa through a lot of different phases.
Yes.
In the same way, you've had a lot of hair phases. I've seen Tulsa through her own hair phases. And I'm hopeful about where we're going. I think, every 2 years I look around and there's 4 new buildings in some way, and there's new initiatives and new programs, and being a part of programs myself where I often am working with people who aren't from here, who are coming here to do different things. I have to resell it sort of and re-fall in love with the city over time. And I've done that. Absolutely. So there's also just a huge amount of opportunity here. I think, in spaces like this or in other spaces, we often talk about like work and our careers and the jobs we're doing, but there's so much else to do socially and, hobbies and things. I'm pretty involved in like the theater performing arts community in town. And
I see that Tracy La Louisiane sticker.
And the drag community and like just spaces like that are easy to get involved in, and you feel really welcome really immediately and can shine bright. So I think, it's just like a wonderful little light in the middle of this bright red state.
Yes.
I think so.
No, I love that. And I think hearing your perspective as a Tulsa lifer in some ways is like, there are people that are growing up here and still choosing it. And I think that is something that big cities don't always have.
Right.
There are lots of people that experience the trials and tribulations of growing up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and are like, I will never come back. But I'm happy and glad to highlight stories where that's not the case, because that's also been my experience as well. I grew up here and wanted to come back because I felt like I could make a difference. Right. And I've seen how quickly I could make a difference, which is what's kept me here. And so that's awesome to hear. I love that you mentioned kind of some of your like extracurricular activities, if you will, because that is important. And I think, that's the allure that some people have, or that other cities have to some other people. But I find it interesting too, like, and this could be your experience or not, but for me, it felt like when I moved back to Tulsa, there were some things that I was like, is there a community for this? Like, I'm not sure. Am I going to have to start it? Do I want to start a community of this thing? And for me, I was like, I can't start everything. I can't I can't be the first person to raise my hand in a city of, I know how many people there are. A lot of people that's like, I want a drag community. I want this community. I think what that process of like seeing, and I don't know, it's kind of like a landscape analysis in some way. I started to figure out that like, no, I'm not the first person with this idea. It just might not look the way that I thought it was going to look. And so how can I plug in and make a meaningful change if I want to? And that's been, I think, the fun part of living in Tulsa for like the past 4 or 5 years for me, is just seeing how giving myself the space to navigate the community as it is.
Right. And did you find that it was like easy to find those spaces too?
In some ways I was like, it's easy, or it's like, oh, it's not. It's just looked different than what I thought. I mean, from my experience, I was essentially going to be in New York City. You don't have to create nothing in New York City. You just have to find it. And I kind of went through that same thing of like, oh, it's just whenever whenever that experience is right for me, it will find me. And that's kind of what I've settled into now. And some of my like civic engagement opportunities, my queer community, like I have found the people that can take me to those opportunities, which is really great. Right.
And then you're pretty quickly given a seat at the table too, which I think is something really special about this city, is like once you're in, people are excited to have you there. And there's not as much of a sense of competition as there is a like collaboration here for
Absolutely. Sure. I mean, this is a point that's been talked about over and over on this podcast, but like specifically the connectivity of Tulsa. I mean, like and one of the things we're going to talk about later is like Impact Academy, and the work that we do collaboratively through Campus Tulsa is about knowing what's going on in the community and the people that end up with projects that the Impact Academy works. Those are personal connections of mine, and of yours, and of other people that we know. And so that's really cool to see how, the work can sometimes overlap with your personal connections.
Yeah.
I want to kind of transition into your work professionally and what you do at the University of Oklahoma. You mentioned the ICCEW. I'd love for you to kind of just like give us a brief overview of what that work looks like, some of the programs that you support, and all the things ICCEW and OU.
Right. Yeah. So it's the Ronni K. Iranni Center for the Creation of Economic Wealth, but probably ICCEW is what you'll hear people say, and it's what we say. We are with the College of Business at OU, and we're really an innovation consulting organization. So our model is to take teams of students and pair them with a real world client on a project where they learn different skills, business skills, consulting skills, working on, something with stakes that is actually going to be put into fruition.
Yeah.
And then on the reverse side, whoever that client is also getting that actual support for a big project, a new idea, program, service, whatever it is that they're building. Yeah. So specifically, we do that through OU in the fall and spring with OU students. And then I, in Tulsa, support our community programs work. So it's that same model, but most of the clients that I work with or people that I'm working with are social entrepreneurs or nonprofits themselves. So we have different programs. One that's been around for about 14 years now is called The Mine. It used to be a program where we paired young professionals with clients, and it was over a series of the course of 9 months, part-time. They would learn different leadership skills and get some curriculum and content around that, and then also work with a real nonprofit in town to help them build out whatever it is they're doing. Yeah. We have since changed that, and part of the reason that we've done that and changed that model is because there are those programs now existing, and something that's really important to us is that we're filling a gap. We're not just repeating what other people are doing. Yeah. And so we've shifted. We actually saw a gap in social entrepreneurs getting the experience themselves of actually doing the critical thinking and work around their new idea or product. So we work with them. It's condensed now into about a 3-month program, short term, where we work with social entrepreneurs or teams of nonprofits to work through like design thinking processes around a big question that they have. Yeah. And then that concludes in sort of like a public opportunity to talk about that, and comes with a small amount of seed funding to test that their idea, or pilot out what they're thinking about doing, that they've worked through that process. So that's The Mine. And then we also have Campus Tulsa Impact Academy, where we met and worked together. Yeah. And so that is a program with Campus Tulsa. It's a Campus Tulsa program where we work with college freshmen and sophomores from any university. And they come to Tulsa over the summer and have a full-time internship where we do the same thing. Yeah. So we pair them with a client, often a social entrepreneur, single entrepreneur, or a nonprofit who has a problem they're trying to solve, a big question around, a service maybe they already provide, but they're looking for a way to make that more innovative or do something differently. Yeah. And our interns will help them do the customer discovery, market research, think through the finances, model out the business, to think about what it would really look like for them, what it would take for that idea to be possible.
Yeah. So that's amazing.
Yep.
I love both of those programs for what they are. A quick follow-up, just for my understanding and maybe other listeners. What's a social entrepreneur?
Yeah. So a social entrepreneur, it's the same. It's what you think of in terms of entrepreneurship, but it's really more mission-driven kind of entrepreneurship. So somebody who is looking to build out a service or a program, or, it's not common for an individual to have nonprofit status, but like eventually that may be where they're going.
Okay, gotcha.
It could be anything, but it's really thinking through social impact work, less about how to make billions and more about how to affect and influence and impact billions.
Yes, less about billions of dollars.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I think is where we should all be heading. Now I'm saying my personal politics, sure. But no, that's amazing. I appreciate the clarification on that. But really, I think what's so cool about this work is that like we've seen, and I'll speak mostly to the Impact Academy. It's where my direct experiences, but seeing like we have a very diverse group of individuals that come, like you've mentioned, from lots of different schools. But even we do have a lot of feeder kids or kids that come from the University of Oklahoma who have extremely diverse backgrounds in that. And so to have so many kids come to Tulsa and be like, what's Tulsa?
Yeah. Yep.
It's so fun. Like I think of it as fun because I'm like, we in some ways get to like really push them into the deep end in terms of like some of Tulsa's biggest social issues. We had there were considerations for LGBT businesses last year. There was conversations about homelessness and working with Lindsay House. There have been just some really amazing, I think, opportunities for a individual who might not have ever known anything about a city to jump right into one of its biggest problems and how a organization is meeting the need or attempting to meet that need and scale the capacity of the organization to meet that need. So I think Impact Academy is such a good name for it in some ways because it's like Impact Boot Camp in some ways, and you guys really take them through amazing programming so that it's like step by step. This is how you're going to build a business case. This is how you're going to model the solutions. I really love the methodology behind the work, and I get to see it, which is so cool.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I love it. I think something that's really fun about my work is that the model of our programs repeat cyclically throughout the year, but we are always taking on new projects every year. So every summer, maybe, the framework around my summer looks the same, but all the work we're doing within that and the problems that we're exploring and the people we're talking to and the research we're doing is a whole new world for me always. So I always learn a lot through those projects. And I love that.
Yeah, we're going to talk about Impact Academy now, and this is a knowledge test for me.
Okay.
I remember 2023 was the Terrence Crutcher Foundation, Jay Parlay, and Lindsay House.
Lisa's House.
Lisa's House.
Yep.
There's another organization called Lindsay House. Okay. Lisa's House.
Yep.
2024 was the Tulsa Botanic Gardens, Circle Cinema, and the Prism Project.
Right.
Okay, perfect. So now I would love, and I'm saying the names of organizations randomly, but these are the organizations that the Impact Academy served and created like full project briefs on and gave those project briefs on. We are almost in the middle, I don't know, went through a quarter of the summer for the 2025 program. So I'd love for you to maybe talk a little bit about 2025's Impact Academy, maybe some of the projects and some of the work, and then also just like how you support them on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. So this summer we have 12 interns, 3 teams of 4. We have 3 different projects. So the first project is A Way Home for Tulsa. That's with Housing Solutions of Tulsa. The interns are really exploring how to better engage individuals with lived experience of homelessness in the decision-making of all of the organizations who serve those people. So it's really a needs assessment, but it's a lot more innovation around creating kind of a longstanding structure. It's good and valuable to collect feedback from individuals with lived experience, but how do you make sure you're not just checking boxes on a grant to say you did it? How do you make sure that how you're doing that, the methods you're approaching, and the data you're collecting is then used in a valuable way that makes it really meaningful and helps the individuals both giving you the feedback feel valued, and also like you as an organization are building that out to be the best it can be. So that's A Way Home for Tulsa.
Awesome.
Then we're working with PFLAG Tulsa. They have just reestablished their charter in Tulsa. And so they're kind of have this new opportunity to explore what are the new needs in 2025 of parents, specifically of school-age children in the queer community. So what sort of support do they need? What sort of events do they need? What does it look like for PFLAG to meet those needs? Yeah,
and for folks, like PFLAG is a new I guess I would say like it's not new nationally, but new in terms of being reintroduced to the Tulsa community.
That's right.
Parents and Friends of Lesbian and Gays is what PFLAG stands for.
Yes.
I always have to remind myself what that acronym stands for, but it's a great organization, and that's amazing work.
And anymore, I think it's important to say it expands beyond lesbian and gays. So PFLAG it's been around for so long. They have this name, they have this acronym, but it is an expansive organization that is really supporting, so many different members of that community. So, it's been really interesting. I think the team has had an opportunity to talk to a lot of chapters, PFLAG chapters nationally.
Awesome.
So that's been really cool to learn from, what people are doing across the nation and how can we get that to Tulsa? What is the most meaningful? And then they're also speaking with a lot of parents because that's really what they're looking to find is what are the needs? What do they see? Overwhelmingly, what they're hearing is community first and foremost, and then some other stuff, the other things. And within that can come later. Sure, curriculum, sure, education, things like that. But it really is just like parents who are having the same experience I am, and how do I connect to them? So it's going to be, we're only halfway through the summer, so we'll see sort of what they do with that information and what sort of solutions they brainstorm and develop. But I'm excited to see that. That's awesome. And then our third project is Lolo Look. And so that is two social entrepreneurs, Nick Annette Miller, who is a visual artist here in Tulsa, and then Joyce Ham. And Joyce actually lives in New York City. And what they do is they support kind of like deaf education and deaf programming, or programming for, individuals with hearing disabilities at fine arts and cultural institutions. And so the goal, their hope is that they're not necessarily going in and doing programming, but what they're doing is building the capacity of those institutions to have that all the time and be able to offer that. So a lot of the work is understanding what those institutions need to make that possible. What would it take? And then also, what are the needs of the deaf individuals in those institutions as well? I think it's really easy to say, well, you go to a museum, it's a visual experience. We take for granted how much of that experience is hearing. And so they're doing a lot of work around that and supporting those entrepreneurs. And they just got their nonprofit status. And so they're in a really rich position to be able, I think, to build out really cool programming for that community.
That's amazing work. And I know they are like, I know that's hard.
Yeah, it is.
I remember in supporting a team last year, like the amount of work that they do that is like so relational to the Tulsa community is extremely important, because you're essentially building a business case or the scaffolding for an organization to take your findings and run with it. And you hope that they can run with it. Yeah. It's so important to know and understand who your final delivery point is, and also the capacity of that person and their community to support that. What's really fun about these final presentations that we have coming up is we get to see some of the community members and stakeholders that take a specific interest in a project. And also you get to see like these kids who might have been really nervous at the midterms, like really turn it on. Yep. I am always so impressed at the final presentations, because I then remind myself too, these are freshmen and sophomores. Could I have done something like this my freshman and sophomore year of college? I would like to say yes, but it's really cool to see.
Yeah, it's really interesting because it's my favorite part of the summer, I think. We introduced the projects day one of the internships. We have an idea of where they'll go, or at least what the big, the overarching problem is, or the big question that they're trying to solve. The wide eyes in the room every time we introduce those projects into, flash forward 9 weeks at the end of the summer doing these final presentations. They have done so much work and research. They know more than, including staff, like anybody else in the room, about these projects. They know more than the clients often, because they have spoken to way more people. They have done way more research. That's part of the value that our teams bring is, clients don't have the bandwidth to go do 100 interviews on this one thing. And so that's what our teams can do. So they really are standing up there as the experts in the room over the thing that they're talking about. They take such a sense of pride in that work and in those projects. And it's our hope that they would then take that into the rest of their kind of collegiate careers and work thereafter.
Absolutely. And I feel like I've been able to stay connected with some alumni on LinkedIn, and seeing some of the like amazing next steps that they take is so cool to see, because this isn't just an internship for them in some ways. Like, this is the internship that sparked an interest, or maybe even like connected a dot for them that they didn't know was within their major. I find it really interesting too. Last year, we worked on the application review process of like seeking candidates. And, we have so many folks that have like an engineering background, which is really interesting. I think for an engineer, someone who's very like, for lack of a better word, like mechanical or like very, they approach it with a certain discipline already. And these projects are so not black and white. It's not crunching numbers. There's part of it is, but it's like considering so much in a holistic approach that I feel like it's expansive to that discipline in so many ways. So I really love Impact Academy. It's I'm so glad we get to continue working on it. And it's it's probably the fourth iteration, but this is my third time being a part of it.
Yeah, it's the fifth year actually. Okay. So yeah, I failed
we did it remotely.
I failed to mention, the first summer, sort of what building on this theme of like filling gaps, Impact Academy was born kind of as this strategic partnership with Campus Tulsa and ICCW and several other organizations to meet the needs in COVID of everybody losing their summer internships. Yeah. So it was like a really quick, it was a very fast, like, okay, what can we do? Well, at ICC, we have a model. It works. We can scope it and scale it for a summer very easily. The hardest part is finding projects. And to your point, you just call who you know. Yeah. Who do you know who is working on something? How can we help? We're pretty plugged in with Tulsa Area United Way. They're always really excellent about, whether or not they are working with an organization or funding that organization, they have a pulse on who is doing what in town and who needs support and help. And so it was born out of that. And then now, obviously, we've scaled it to more of an in-person internship full-time over the summer.
Well, that's awesome. And to that point, I think something that you do in your kind of like non-summer time, I get the Gradient like newsletter and I see some of it's like get office hours with Claire Sbanotto. And I'm like, wait, I could just text her. Why am I about to sign up for these links? But I want to because they look so enticing. Tell us about the work that you do over there and kind of like your own community engagement.
Yeah. So Gradient, one of their priorities is just like supporting entrepreneurs and being a part of the ecosystem in whatever way that makes sense. Yeah. So I do office hours, open office hours quarterly with them. And we call them venture strategy sessions in our world. But really the idea is just like an initial touch point with somebody who has a question and doesn't really quite know where to go. So early stage ideas. Often what I do best is working with people who are maybe like pre any accelerator program, pre anything like that. It's just something early on that they're thinking of. So ranging from I want to, do contract marketing on the side. How do I figure out how to do that? Yeah. Into I've developed this item and I have a prototype. Where do I go from here? Awesome. And we see everything in between. So people with established businesses, but maybe have another idea within that. So a lot can come of that. A lot of times it becomes me just connecting them to other resources and pointing them in directions they maybe didn't know were possible.
Air traffic control.
Right. Yeah.
of ideas.
This way. And then we've got like, we pretty regularly source projects out of those conversations as well, whether that's in the fall and spring with our university programs or mine participants or somebody working with Impact Academy. Yeah. But just sort of like figuring out, okay, what is it that you need? What, and in what ways can I help you? So that's the hope, that's the dream. Yeah. And I really enjoy it because it opens up my world to other people doing everything. Something that's really lovely about Gradient too is that's open to people who aren't just members of Gradient. It's open to everyone.
Anyone that's like community. Co-working that day or whatever, that's awesome.
That's right. So anybody can come in. And also, I offer these office hours, but it's a big part of my work is just like connecting and meeting with people. So I'm always available to do that. This is just like a formal structure to be introduced to that community. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I like the urge to book time is so strong because like Jesse and I have been working on so many different things. We're like, I think it might be time. Yeah. I do have a big question.
Yeah. And sometimes, when you have something that you've just been playing around in your head, having another person who knows nothing about it and just taking 10 minutes to explain what you're working on to them can often, I could say nothing and somebody could be speaking for so long and they're like, oh, I know what I should be doing.
That is
it's
me
like
to a T.
Yeah. It is like a sounding board sometimes is all you need. And I'm more than happy to do that.
Absolutely. I call myself a verbal processor. Yep. Like it's one of those things where like it needs to get out of my brain for it to actually start to form into anything. And that's very evident now that I have 2 podcasts.
Right.
Okay, Claire, my last question for you is really a little philosophical, not necessarily like related to any of the work. I think you've done an amazing job of telling, the impact specifically of the work that you do and also just the connectivity of your work to the community. So thank you so much for that. Yeah. I would love for you to kind of maybe just enlighten us in some ways on kind of like how you see Tulsa's like nonprofit and entrepreneurial community growing or changing in the next few years. If you've seen anything that's missing, maybe in your observation of other cities' successes or regions, like what? Tell us.
What are we missing? I think that is where I tend to go. Maybe it's just because that's the work I do. I see it growing and changing? Yes.
Absolutely.
I think it's like actually impossible for Tulsa to stand still. There is too much energy here. It's buzzing and vibrating, where something's going to happen.
Yeah.
But I do think something's missing. And I've gleaned this from many conversations I have, part of those office hours or talking to people, is there's this gap in access to resources for the like early social entrepreneur, the early nonprofit work. So you think about the journey that they're going through. You can do some accelerator programming, something, great programs that are super, super helpful that come with some sort of non-dilutive funding, like builders and backers or programs like that. And then there's like the next thing, which is, funding from a large family organization or a United Way, support or something. But what happens in the middle when somebody needs a little bit more support to get them to the next step? Often the work that our student teams are doing is making financial recommendations. How much do they need? What will it take to be possible? The recommendations they're presenting. Grant funding for nonprofits becomes a lot of that. And the big question is always where and how.
And if it's available
if it's available, right. And like, how do I find that? How do I get it? Where do I get it?
Yeah.
I've gone through the programs. I have the skills that I need. I've learned what I need to learn.
Yeah.
I'm not a 40-person organization with 10 years to demonstrate that I've done what I need to do.
Yeah.
I'm this person in the middle. And where do I get the funding and support? And I think that comes from maybe a shift in mindset, just like cultural mindset around like testing concepts.
Yeah.
And that being really important in nonprofit work.
Yeah.
So that's really important in entrepreneurial work. That's celebrated.
It's encouraged.
Right.
And celebrated.
It's encouraged and celebrated in prototyping. But in nonprofit work, somebody's got an idea, but they don't know how to test it without getting the opportunity and somebody to back that testing.
Yeah. Or directly impacting the people that you're trying to serve, like from the jump. Which
exactly. There's nothing worse to me than somebody with a really amazing idea having to self-fund that idea when there are resources and in these small sort of like pebble little grants that I think just like need to exist, and I don't know where they are or how people get them. So that don't come with added burden to that founder or added burden to that entrepreneur. So I love a pitch competition. Do not get me wrong. But that is a grind in and of itself to have to go and participate in so many pitch competitions just to collect $15,000. And you may or may not win. You could do pitch competitions for a year, hopefully to collect the amount you need to go and test one concept. And I think there should be something else.
Which could be the year that it takes to then test it again,
to do the thing. So there's a hole, and that's what I think we need.
Interesting. Okay. I love that. Yeah. I think naming it and not putting, you're not telling me to do it.
No. And that's the thing too, is like who? I don't know. I mean, that doesn't need to be philanthropic organizations always providing these grants. I think that I see a lot of logos and a lot of sponsorships and a lot of events, and it would be really meaningful, I think, if some of those funds were used, more directly.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I think I'm just going to let you audience members sit with that. We obviously can continue to talk about it because I think it's really important work, but I really appreciate just from an observational standpoint, like that well experienced perspective. And I have somewhat of my own. We're not necessarily in the nonprofit side of this business, but we do have some elements that are like for good. And so to kind of find that happy medium is going to be interesting. And that might be part of the question that I asked you. I'm like teasing it out so much. But I really have, I hope that the Tulsa community can sit with that and see how maybe they, or someone they know or an organization they know can push the envelope on that. Because I think it's a really important meeting people along the way of that journey.
Yeah, so. And there's models for it. There's models for things like this that happen in other places. I got the idea actually because the Tulsa Performing Arts Center receives a grant to do programming. They do like Orbit Arts Festival and some things like that. They receive these sort of like federal funds. And one thing that they do is empower other theater communities and professionals and artists around town with that money directly.
Awesome.
And I think that that's a really impactful model to see, okay, we receive these dollars, we could keep them for ourselves, or we can give them straight to the people who are doing something on the ground in the spaces that maybe we aren't. So people don't have to come to us. The art goes to them and the money goes to them where and meets them where they have agency. So
that's awesome.
It can be done.
It can be done.
Mm-hmm.
You heard it here first. Well, Claire, thank you so much for your time, your wisdom, your expertise. If there's anything you want to plug in terms of like open programs or connecting with you, where might people find you?
Okay, what do I plug? So we have a Mine cohort coming up. You can find my contact information at themineok.co. Or I'm on LinkedIn, Claire Sbanotto. Mm-hmm. You can find me at Gradient. We would love to work with you and have you be a part of that cohort. You will get a lot out of it. You will meet other people in the same work that you're doing. We are also always sourcing projects. So if you're not looking to do a program yourself, but you need some help in the capacity of a student team, please reach out. Let us know. I want to talk to you about that. It can be nonprofits, but we also do in the fall and spring with our university programs. We work with large businesses. We work with not just social entrepreneurs.
Awesome.
And then personally, you can see me in Ragtime at the Tulsa Performing Arts Center. We open August 8th. I'm playing Mother.
I love that.
And I would love to know there's some people in the audience.
Absolutely. Oh, thank you so much. Those were great plugs.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for being here. And thank you so much for listening to this episode of Grow With Us. Thank you for listening to this episode of Grow With Us. Grow With Us is supported by In Tulsa Initiatives. If you are interested in learning more about In Tulsa services for job placement and workforce development, please visit intulsa.com. From there, you can join our talent network where you will get access to a newsletter, and our talent team will make sure we put the right opportunities on your radar. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify to be notified when more episodes of Grow With Us are released. Let us know what you think about how we're doing by rating and reviewing. It really helps. Grow With Us is edited and engineered by Pod for Good Media and Jesse Ulrich, and it is hosted by me, Evan Barton. This has been Grow With Us.